Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for sticking with us for our panel this afternoon. It's going to be a great one. Today, we're talking about ChatGPT, generative AI, and large language models. What are they? How do they work? And how will they change the world? So you've heard about this from various different presenters today. And today, we've got some great perspectives from a variety of industries and companies on this panel to tell you what they're excited about with generative AI, explain a little bit more about how it works, what it is, and how they think it will transform the future of data science and many other industries. So we're going to kick things off by introducing our panelists. I'll kick it over to them to allow them to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about how they got into data science, what they do now, and what companies that they're with currently. So we're going to start with Jay Prakash, who is the Director of Analytics and Technology at Beam Suntory. Jay.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to all the wonderful panel for also joining me out here. This is the third year I believe I'm doing this, and it's been always exciting. And there are a lot of questions which fire up on the chat, and that makes the conversation more interesting here too. I'm the Director for Planning and Analytics at Beam Suntory, and my journey with data has been almost forever, I should say. You play around with data, you're working with simple data tasks, and as you progress, I've been working with different analytics technologies and everything that's across every company that I've worked with. And data science was more of an evolution for me. I work closely with the business, and as I see them start using the data, more and more applications come into mind as, how can we do this better with data? We have so many sophisticated things that can happen with that, and that's the way I got involved within data science and all of this fun things that's happening around here. When I probably started, or even if 5 years ago, there were not many terms that we know today in the data science field that existed, but people were still doing a sort of a data science activity, but it was not really called that. But as we evolve now, I think it's becoming more and more prominent, more and more user-friendly, and more democratic. So that's my journey in analytics and data science.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Now let's go to Jess Larson from Pinterest.
So I studied cognitive science and computer science in college. Wasn't really totally sure what I wanted to do, and data just kind of ended up being what I fell into with that background. But I started off on the data science side. I was like an analytics engineer for a little bit, doing some research type stuff. From that, I became a data analyst. Kind of realized that data analyst wasn't really a role that I loved doing. I didn't really have the autonomy that I was hoping that I would have. And so I ended up moving over to data engineering and supporting data analysts and data scientists. And that's kind of what I've been doing since then. And so, some of those roles have been actually moving data around so that data analysts and data scientists have high quality data that they can use in order to analyze stuff. But since then, I did a lot of other things supporting data scientists, and then now I actually don't touch any data. I just manage a database and build tools for people who do move data around, people who do analyze the data, and really focusing on that data privacy component. And then more recently, I published a book about a year and a half ago on the data privacy component in the Snowflake database. I think you're muted.
Brian, you're muted.
You're muted, Brian.
Brian, while you're working through your technical difficulties, I'm just going to kick off and do my introduction, and hopefully you'll catch up with us. Right?
Yep.
Well, really happy to be here with all of you today. My name is Rachini Musavi. I'm the Chief Analytics Officer over at UNC Health in North Carolina. Our flagship hospital is part of the UNC system, so go Teals. I'm very excited to have that as my alma mater as well. So for me, I got into data, I would say purely by accident. I have a health administration degree, so I actually thought I was going to be working in hospitals and healthcare, supporting the operational side of things. And through my consulting experience, which I did early, right after graduation from college, I learned that I really loved the data. So when I came back to UNC Health to really get involved with things here at our hospital, I started off as an analyst, and comparable to really what Jessica said, found my way through our system in terms of the things that I liked, the things I was interested in, evolved from being an analyst that was running ad hoc queries and providing business answers back to our customers, to being able to kick off and start our very first data governance program at UNC Health, and then evolved over to being able to be the chief analytics officer for our health system. And we've been doing data science as well as AI since 2016. And we are now knee deep in the middle of building out some generative AI capabilities in partnership with both our vendor for our EHR, which is electronic health record, as well as with Microsoft.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, what I was going to say before I unplugged my headphones and was muted was I think we're hearing a variety of perspectives here. So we heard about data engineering from Jess, and that's a really emerging role, and you see a lot more companies building roles around that. And then from Rachini, the data executive aspect of it is Jay as well, that, there's a lot of different things you can do under the umbrella of data science that are not necessarily data scientists, but a lot of different roles that fit within that umbrella that make all the pieces work together. So Taj, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet all of you. We have a great panel here. Just already I can feel the excitement because of the diversity of the panel and the background and experiences. So my journey started about 11 or 12 years ago, which now seems dated, but I'm really proud of it because back when I got started, I was just looking for the next thing in technology. I've always been in technology, and I was saying, hey, what next do I need to learn and understand, and how to apply myself? How do I evolve in my career? And I got made fun of. People were laughing at me because I said, hey, I'm just going to go back to school and get my master's. And people thought that was really funny, and I was being stupid because I was already successful. Like, why would I invest even more time and effort and energy into learning something? They thought technology is technology, but clearly it's not. And so my journey started professionally as a senior data scientist for Honeywell. And that's when I thought I had truly arrived, because you put scientist in my title. I thought it was great. But the learning curve was obviously huge, right? What you learn in school and how you actually apply it in the workplace. But luckily, I had some management experience, right? So I ended up being a manager and a director, and now I run AI for Nike North America, and it's primarily on the engineering side. So typically, you would build models and build solutions, and you hand it off to an engineering team that then deploys it and creates a solution at scale, automates it. So that's what my team does. So I have data scientists on my team. I have machine learning engineers. I have data engineers. I have product owners. So we have a full spectrum of folks and a lot of talented people that come together to take a business problem, we solve it, and then we not just build a solution, but we also deploy it and make it work at scale, which at Nike is like a big deal because there's a lot of infrastructure and there's a lot of hurdles to jump through, and there's also a boatload of data. So it's been very exciting in my career.
Very interesting. Henry?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I am a data engineer. I'm self-taught. I started in the healthcare industry 10 years ago. So I've been trying to manage that processes, be able to learn as much as I can, to be able to create data solutions for the client. I got into natural language processing three years ago, and I found the power of that tool to manage text data and be able to leverage to provide solutions, extract, build pattern processes within the data, and store it into database. So it's been a 10-year learning process for me, but I've been very excited along the years, learning to work with clients and provide clients strategic data plans and implement solutions at the end.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. And natural language processing, very much a part of what we're talking about on this panel with large language models and kind of the revolutionary aspects in many ways of ChatGPT and other large language models. So I'll quickly introduce myself as well. I'm Brian Mink. I'm the co-founder and president of Data Science Connect. Many of you met or know my wife, Amelia Mink, who from this morning's talk. And Amelia and I co-founded Data Science Connect. And my background is a little bit different than most folks who kind of find themselves in the data space. I'm actually an attorney and practiced law for almost a decade. And in that capacity, I worked at large law firms and was a legal executive at a couple of large companies. And through that experience, found that we were dealing with a lot of information, and too often as attorneys we were operating on hunches or based on our anecdotal past experience instead of looking at the data. And in many cases, the reason why we didn't have good data is because all of our data was buried in unstructured language. It was all text in documents. It's very hard to analyze. It's not like a spreadsheet or something structured that you can very easily leverage. And so a lot of what I did in sort of the later half of my law practice was focusing on innovative ways to make our law practice more data-driven, to provide more data-driven insights to clients. And that ultimately led me to Data Science Connect, where we're making data science accessible to all. So very happy to have everyone with us today. So we're going to kick off our first question to our panelists. So we've been hearing a lot about ChatGPT in the media and today in our other talks. And ChatGPT is built on something called a large language model that we've talked about, or an LLM, you may hear it referred to as that. And it's also an example of something called generative AI. So I'd like our panelists to break that down for us in layman's terms. What are each of those things? What is ChatGPT or GPT? What is generative AI? And what are large language models? And how do they work? How do they relate to one another? So who wants to start us off?
Well, I can attempt to, since I get to do presentations on this topic for healthcare leaders who know nothing about AI pretty often. But I'd love for some of our folks who are well studied in this space to maybe correct or back me up if I say anything. So let me start with the most fun topic, which is ChatGPT. Right? It's a wonderful tool that was introduced that really, I'm sure everybody by now has tried, just because it's so easily accessible and fun to play with. My daughter and I do bedtime stories using ChatGPT most nights, so it's one of those really fun tools that you can get into. And it's a chat-based application where you can go in, and it's dated. So I want to put that caution out there. It was a model that was trained on basically the internet through September 2021, so it's a little bit dated, but it provides some really great answers in a conversational format. Where I look at it like an assistant, right? It's like having 100 interns working with you side by side, a bunch of people that are helping you to provide a first draft of something. And so it's a great tool to play with as well as use to augment your way you work. Now, it was based on the internet, right? The internet has a lot of information in it. So that's why it's not just big data. This is a large language model, lots and lots and lots of data that's flowing into it, that's being consumed. Not all of it good, not all of it accurate. I will put that out there, but it is an extremely large data set that gets fed into what that model was based on. And then for the last part of that, the generative AI side of it. So we will likely have lots of discussions around AI and the technical aspects of it. But when we think about artificial intelligence, the game changer that comes with tools like ChatGPT and all these other models is that we now are creating things with AI. So we are not just doing risk models and other things that help us to assess this data. We're actually generating the next piece of information, whether it's an image, things like Dolly puts out there, or creating bedtime stories, like I mentioned earlier. So it's creating something that can be new and out there for the world to consume.
Awesome. Great description, Rachini. And it raises a good point that I think tees off our next question, which is when you're using something like ChatGPT that's based on a large language model that is itself based on lots and lots of text that may or may not be accurate. The way that you are most likely to get quality outputs is by giving it a quality input. And so if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. If you put something quality in, you're more likely to get something quality out, or get something more like the output that you're looking for. And the term that is commonly used for this is prompt engineering, that if you can engineer the correct prompt, then you're more likely to get the output that you want. So can you guys talk about sort of how prompt engineering works? Like, give us some of the technical background of why that works the way it does, and then how might folks in our audience today use prompt engineering to get the results that they want on the various projects that they're working on?
I can talk specifically that you could think of a prompt engineering as structured data, and when it's fed into the model, it's actually doing a probability of what the net response will be based on the user's input. So when the words will calculate a probability, and then based on the training data within the model, it will spit out output based on your prompt. And also keep in mind, based on the training data, it will develop hallucinations that might not sometimes make sense, but keep in mind, it's a statistical model predicting the output based on when you put in input data.
So how can we recognize a hallucination? How do we prevent hallucinations?
So hallucination have good training data, and when you run your prompt, makes sure it's clear to the point, and it's asking questions that's clear, that relates to your topic, and that will reduce the error in math terms, reduce your residual.
Yeah. Where do you guys see this going? I mean, in terms of large language models, ChatGPT is a very early, although it's very highly capable, or at least seems to be highly capable. It's a very early version of what it's likely to be in a few years. And so where do you guys see this going as far as reducing hallucinations, prompt engineering, improving the quality of the inputs and outputs?
Before like totally tackling that piece, I just wanted to add on to like just conceptually what that prompt engineering kind of means, looks like. So how a lot of these models work is that they look at massive amounts of text and try to understand the relationships between individual words within phrases. And kind of building from these two words are next to each other, all the way up to try to approximate understanding of meaning of these words and meanings of this larger concept. And so one of the things that I think about, like when it comes to prompt engineering, is just, if we use really, really common words like the, or reason, or words like this, they're going to be very strongly connected to a ton of other words because they appear so much with many, many, many different words in text. And then kind of on the far end of that spectrum, we also have words that are really rarely used. So, when you're writing like an essay and you're looking through the thesaurus to try to find some interesting words because your English teacher told you you're not allowed to use the word great to describe things anymore. Those words, those are helpful. But sometimes that there aren't enough relationships with other words, that when you feed those into your prompt, you're not going to necessarily get such great results, just because of that limited data. And so when you do design those prompts, you're really just trying to find a way to balance it out between words that are so common that you're just going to get so many other things that aren't necessarily related to what you want, and words that are super uncommon where you maybe won't get any results at all, or results that aren't very helpful. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very, very good point. And I think you mentioned about kids using this for their homework and things like that. So that does kind of segue into our next point, which is that's one of the very controversial aspects of ChatGPT and generative AI is what does this mean for schools? Are kids going to use this to cheat? I mean, if you can write something that sounds like a human produced it, and you can write it in the voice of not just someone who knows about this subject, but you can write it in the voice of a 4th grader or a 10th grader or whatever age you are, and use that prompt. And pretty soon, generative AI is going to be integrated in a lot of the apps that we use, like Microsoft Word, where it may not even be that you went to ChatGPT to do your homework. Maybe it was just part of the whole writing process. So can you guys speak to that? How should they use ChatGPT responsibly? And I think that applies not just in the school setting, but also in careers. How are companies going to use this responsibly? It's a great power, and with great power comes great responsibility.
So I love this question. Maybe I'll just be quick here, so you can answer as well. So I love this question because I was in elementary school when everybody started getting internet at home, or when I got internet at home. It was really junior high when Google became something that was really easily and readily available. And I remember all of these same conversations happening, like, oh, is everybody just going to cheat because you have the internet? You can just go to Google and you can find any information you want in the world. It's not just, going and looking at newspapers and looking at books from the library and encyclopedias, but really having access to all the information on Earth. And I think it's honestly like kind of the same answer, right? It's just technology, and it's all about like how you use it, and I think that we will develop ways to be able to tell when people are plagiarizing using ChatGPT, et cetera, just like they did with the internet, right? It took a few years, but in high school we had Turnitin, where you would submit your paper and it would give you a grade based on what was found on the internet. And I think kind of everything else applies, right? You use this as a starting point. You get information, you use that to better your understanding, and then you should then go and write it yourself on your own without just copying it. And I do also think, cite your sources. There will probably be some interesting thoughts from some of the the APA, et cetera, on how to cite GPT properly. But those are my thoughts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll jump on that as well. So recently there was this attorney who filed a brief, right, and cited some, Brian, you would know about this, cited some lawsuits that were not real, they never existed, and the judge questioned it, and he said, well, I just used ChatGPT. So just remember, large language models, or any language model for that matter, they don't have memory, they don't fully understand what they're saying or what they're doing. It doesn't mean that every answer you get is right or ethical, or just something that'll hold up in court of law or even in a classroom. It's not going to go away, right? So the idea is that we just need to, I hate to use policing it better, but some governing bodies and again, cite your sources and say, hey, I use this as a reference point. Like, for example, I would not have gotten my master's without the help of YouTube Math. So it's one of those things, right? So I don't apologize for it. I'm really proud of it. So if I use ChatGPT, I would say, hey, I used ChatGPT and this is what I got back. So it's just a question of how are we going to incorporate that within society a little bit better? Because people are going to use it with or without your permission, because the internet is giving it to them. So, schools cannot police it, but they have to figure out, how to best, grade it more effectively or encourage discussion or better behavior, right? Which is, again, not easy to do. In terms of your question, like how do companies, decide what to do with it? So I know that within my organization, we have spent a lot of effort trying to figure out what is AI governance, what is ethics, what is privacy, why is that important? How do we eliminate, taking our proprietary data and putting it in ChatGPT. So we encourage people to use ChatGPT, but don't use your work email and don't use your data from your work, because you're obviously breaking every rule in the book. We have engaged ChatGPT and OpenAI, and I think the attorneys are dealing with them since the last 5 months. Like, how do we use it effectively within the organization without taking our data and letting it use to train the model to make it better? Because again, we're publicly traded. We have to be protective of our data. So there's a lot that has to happen in order to incorporate that, within the work environment. My 2 cents worth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jay, I think we're going to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about evolution itself, right? To Rachel's, to Jessica's point earlier, right? As technology evolves, we need to evolve ourselves. I think a few years back, right, if there was a programming job available, people were asked to write code, right? You write it in Java, you write it in Python, and things like that. As Google evolved, because that became like a bread and butter for every developer, you need to use that as a reference. So then it started becoming, okay, you just write a pseudocode, because that's the more important part of it. And I think with ChatGPT, I see the same thing. You can get anything out of ChatGPT, but you need to know how to use it, and you need to know whether it's right or wrong. Well, I use it for my daughter's math, and I'm teaching her something, let's say advanced calculus or some of the quadratic equations that she's working on. I put that question into ChatGPT and it comes back with an answer. But majority of the time, it ends up being the wrong answer. So then I have to guide it back and give it like, how do I get to this result? And then it works out all the math accordingly. And it was a good learning experience, because now I understood how to teach her in those concepts, and she's also able to grasp that. But everything needs to be used under that moderation. So I think that's where education also probably needs to evolve in terms of more critical thinking, rather than just plain, do you know this type of questions, right? I think a lot of schools are starting to slowly evolve too. I see that now there's no requirement for memorizing your multiplication tables anymore, because those can be done with any device that people have, or even on their watches today, right? So I think the education is starting to evolve there, but I think it needs to probably catch up much faster now compared to the traditional historical ways of slowly having to catch up.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's always this tension anytime there's a new technology that at first people don't know what to do with it. And at first there are going to be some issues where you have challenges where there's the old way of doing things and there's the new way of doing things with the technology. And the new way might have some downsides ethically or technically if it's giving you the wrong answers. And so you have to understand those limitations, and we have to kind of get through that transition period and identify those issues and think about how we should deal with them as a society. And I think the issues that are occurring now in K-12 education around generative AI and ChatGPT are mirroring what's coming in careers, which is, if AI can write your paper as well as you can, or if it can write your work presentation as well or better than you can, or it can do whatever job you're doing as well or better than you can, then what is your purpose, right? Why are you there? And so I think that it gets to kind of an existential question for us as humans, but I think it also means like we need to show our value. We need to think about, well, outside of just spitting out knowledge that we have memorized, and outside of just writing things kind of uncritically because we have to write them, we've been assigned this paper, like you can get ChatGPT to do that, but what are you adding to it as a human? What are you adding to that to create value? So that's leads us to the next question, which is, yes, ChatGPT can potentially do your homework for you, but one of the other really exciting things it can do from an educational standpoint is it can help you learn things. So for instance, if you're learning how to code, you don't know a programming language, you could spend hours and hours reading articles or on YouTube videos, but ChatGPT often can write the code for you. It can explain the code for you. It can take your code and critique your code and make it better. So talk about if you guys are using that at all in your roles, and how you think that's likely to play a role in what data scientists do in the future.
I can cite an example of it, right? With the work that I'm doing, working with the business, there are different applications that I come across, and the needs are different. It's no one particular thing the same day. And my programming skills are not the best. And, but I do have a tact for understanding what the problem is and trying to think through that, or think through the logic of, what needs to be done. And that's what I use as a base for interacting with ChatGPT, for example, right? I know how to solve the problem. I just wanted to get done quick. And so I just input what my logic is into ChatGPT, and then it spits out the syntax of the code, and I just use that and then get the product done. It's not the most efficient way of doing things from a performance standpoint or from absolute the best way type of thing, but it gets the job done. For those type of efforts, those are some things that I use pretty extensively at work, because that way it speeds up my process, my efficiency. And to your point earlier, where can humans come in and be better if machines can do it? It's that critical thinking aspect of it. You need to be able to think through what needs to be done, and then the machine can do it better than you after that. But it still needs the master to drive it through.
Absolutely. So what are you guys' bold predictions about where this is going? What's the future of work with generative AI? What should kids who are starting their careers in 5, 10, 15 years, their careers may look much different than ours because of this technology. So what are your suggestions to them? Where do you think this is headed?
So I personally think that we're going to see a lot more of a shift towards generalists, even more than we saw, with the internet and being able to use that. So I think, it's not necessarily as important anymore to be an expert in one thing in particular. It's really about, how to use these tools, being able to understand enough that, you can give it like the right prompts, right? And really being like a jack of all trades, somebody who can, do any number of different things. I think we're just going to see that even more than we already saw in the past 5 to 10 years. And this cat, by the way, this is Lacey. You might have seen Lacey. You probably also saw there's a little one walking around that's named Xena. And then I have a black cat that's currently in a box under my desk named Dragon. So.
That's great. The one in the back is the star of the show, though.
She always is, and she would not have it any other way. So.
What about anybody else have other thoughts about kind of where this is headed, what the future of careers will look like?
I can.
Kevin?
Yeah, I can say that internally, I know that, one of my goals for this fiscal year, right? We start in June, and one of the goals is to make our folks more efficient leveraging AI. And a big part of that is thinking not just about the business, but thinking about engineers as well, and thinking about how to make coding easier, right? Think about eventually going to low code, no code, right? But understand what those measurements are in terms of productivity. If we don't add more headcount, then how do we take the people we have and not make them work twice as hard, but make them work half as much and still be highly productive? So on top of ChatGPT, we have been talking to different vendors who have come to us and said, hey, we can actually develop a solution where if you don't have your code commented out, like for example, legacy code, so we can write out comments. And then not only can we write the comments, we can also make it searchable. So it's like semantic search, which is NLP, right? So understanding what that means. And then saying, I don't need to write the same function 10 times. I can write it once and I can just use it 10 times. But 10 different engineers may write it 10 times and in 10 different ways. And also, these models can be trained or with code on top. You can actually, if you make a mistake, like if you say n+1 and it should have been an n-1, it can actually go through, parse out the code and correct it. So it can say, oh, you made a mistake and you're definitely going to get the wrong answer. So these are some ways amongst many that, you can leverage language models. And again, the solution that's built on top of the ChatGPTs to kind of enhance productivity. And I think that is the biggest bang for your buck.
Absolutely. And that's one trend we're going to see, I think, is that there's a lot of products being built on top of GPT. So it has the capabilities, but it addresses some of the things that we've been talking about, like the hallucinations, some of the challenges with prompt engineering, reliability, data privacy, all that kind of stuff is being addressed by other vendors who are then building their technology on top of this really sophisticated GPT language model. I think we'll jump to a couple of questions before we get to our lightning round that are in the chat. So one of the big questions that somebody had was, can we integrate data science in elementary or middle school math curriculum? Any ideas you guys have on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Can we integrate data science into the elementary or middle school math curriculum?
I actually think that, this goes along with the last question that you asked too. I think that data science skills and kind of what also Taj put out there, right? Like we're going to see this become the norm, and the barriers to entry are going to come down a lot further, where you don't have to always be that super technical expert. And so I do think that our middle school and elementary possibly, but definitely middle school, high school, and definitely college curriculums are going to evolve to the point where you're going to see at least one data science course become a required course for students, just because if you don't have that going out into the world, it's going to be that much harder for you to do your jobs moving forward. And I don't think, data science is going to replace every job out there, right? But I do think that if we want to see our society evolve, we've got to prepare our students for the workforce of the future, which is going to be people augmented by technology. And so making sure we set them up with the right curriculum to do so is likely where we're going to be.
I also just wanted to add to that. There's already a lot of data science in math for elementary and junior high school. You just may not recognize that it is data science, right? Me and a number of my friends who work in data, we love to joke about how so much data science is just fancy statistics. And sometimes there's algorithms, that are doing all these crazy things, but at the end of the day, it's really just statistics. But to add on to that, I do think that there's probably some that we can be doing in elementary school. I would say probably most of it would end up being junior high, just because there are some foundations that I think that you need before you start doing more of it. Probably like some algebra skills, that kind of thing, to fundamentally understand what's happening. Because I think it is very important to fundamentally understand what's happening, even if you're not like the most mathy person ever. To just understand what's going on under the hood is always a good idea.
And I do want to take this one as well, because math I did not think I was very good at math in high school. And then I never made a B in any math class I ever took in college, right? So it's like my claim to fame. But really, I think Calc 1, 2, and 3, I had to go back to school. As I said, did my master's. I was out for like 10 years. So I had to go back and take those prerequisites again to get into my master's. And they were sequential. So I had to take an extra year of like math, right, before I got into the program. But most of the skills, the math skills, are already embedded within the curriculum. You just don't recognize it because it's not being presented in that way. And I tell people, putting my data scientist hat on, the easiest thing you can think about data and mining the data, you're finding a function, f of x, right? So you say x plus 2, right? That's a function. And this data science is just a more complicated function with a whole bunch of data, and each column is an x. So you have a bunch of x's. And you're just finding a decision function, which is nothing more than a squiggly line running through the data, and that's your function, and that's a model, right? So I could make it very simple, because I spend a lot of time trying to understand the complexity and then trying to simplify it to something I could I knew and I could relate to. So seems to me like everybody is already learning all the right skills. It's just how it's going to be packaged in the future to kind of say, hey, you already have like 10 years of math, and now we're just going to add some programming language and maybe throw in a couple of models, and 101 of data science, right? So it's already there. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the key thing here is literacy. Like we've talked about being a generalist instead of a specialist, and how everything is so rapidly evolving. And I think that's really the key is you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be able to do everything. But what you need to know is what do I know? What don't I know? What do I need to get help with? What can I, in a job, you may have lots of people on your team. You don't have to be good at everything. So it's really just about knowing which levers to pull and knowing how it impacts whatever goal you're trying to achieve, and then being able to execute that by enlisting help or having technology or learning math or whatever it is. But it's just pulling the right levers and having that literacy and that general expertise to be able to know what you need to do. So with that, we'll go to our lightning round. We're almost out of time here. So in one line or a couple, and we'll go around the circle, what do you think will be the most impactful application of generative AI in the near future? And we'll go in reverse order from the way we did intros and start with Henry.
So we've seen generative AI with ChatGPT. Now we've seen with image and video. The next step would be finance, own companies building their own model and predicting what will be the price for metals, stocks, things of that nature. So that's the next logical next step for not for the public use, but for finance company.
That's great. Taj?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm most concerned about. I'm concerned about the 2% of the deep fakes, and that, shadows, the good work that's being done by generative AI. And especially with this next 2 years of an election cycle, that's what I see is going to be the big hit against the ChatGPTs of the world. But I think there's a lot to be learned, a lot to be had.
Yeah, that's great. Rachini?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about often that our jobs, all of us in the data and AI space, is to mitigate the risks and really promote and celebrate the benefits of what generative AI and AI can bring to the world. I'm going to give a very targeted healthcare type answer, just because that's the world I live in. I am really hopeful. I mean, our health system in the United States and in other parts of the world is quite broken, right? We need to transform in order to evolve and do better for everyone, and all of our neighbors and all of our friends. So I think generative AI has a really big potential to aid in that transformation. In just 30 more seconds, I get a lot of really boring work chats. This has been probably the most fun chat to witness that I've been in a long time. So thank you for that.
So, totally agreed. Lots of great contributions. Jess?
Yeah, so I think just making knowledge a lot more accessible is going to be the biggest thing we're going to see. You don't have to be, have a computer science background in order to, have some side project that you get up and running fairly quickly. So I think it's going to be really cool just to kind of get people passionate about data science, get them passionate about computing in general, and really open up to audiences that, have been kind of excluded from this in the past. And yeah, that just really low entry barrier is pretty cool.
Absolutely. I saw somebody in the chat had said, talking about developing countries, and I think this is really a game changer for a lot of folks who otherwise would have, they may not be able to go and have a world-class education at a university and pay money to do that in another country, but they can access the internet, they can access this and have all that knowledge available to them. It's really a game changer. Jay?
I think digital twin concept is going to be next big frontier, and I think we're already seeing a lot of it. At least we're going to see it in every aspect of day-to-day interaction. Coming from a consumer product and a manufacturing standpoint, one of the things that from a consumer standpoint we would see is more interaction in the metaverse of how people are going to interact with the products and services that a company would provide, and being more part of that same field. And there's going to be a lot more marketing and interactive campaign that's going to go around that. But from a manufacturing standpoint of view, think about like a GPS. You're starting a particular route, it tells you where to go, what are the potential obstacles, what are your alternative routes. I think that's what we're going to see from a production and manufacturing side. You're going to see an equivalent of what's happening on your production flow, to identify where the potential bottlenecks are, what are you supposed to do, is there any alerts that you can do, and those type of things. I think that's where we're going to see the next big moves in at least the next immediate future.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'll quickly give mine as well. I think to me, the most impactful thing it's going to do is really it's awaken public consciousness around data in areas that it previously had not touched. Data, we've been talking a lot about data, and we're all data people, and so we often jump to the data solution and think about all the different ways that data can enhance whatever we're doing and the industry that we're in. But coming from law, and Rachini, I know medicine is the same way, and several other industries are sort of stuck in the past, and there's a lot of reasons for that, some of which are data issues, some of which are culture issues, and just kind of the nature of folks who pursue law and medicine tend to be more conservative, more slow to change, that kind of thing, practitioner kind of mindset. And so I think this is, even the lawyers that I know who were most resistant to all of the data stuff that I was pushing, everybody's tried ChatGPT. Everybody's plugged in and said, can you write my contract based on this? And even if it's not ready to be the contract they send to their client, it's still just awakening that public consciousness and making people realize just how far along we are and just how close we are to a really, really big shift in AI and data and the way it integrates with every aspect of our lives and industries. I think is that alone is a significant change from even a year ago. And so I think we're going to continue to see a lot of development towards making industries more data-driven and understanding the importance of how this is going to transform all of our industries and lives and preparing for that before it takes us totally by surprise. So thank you all for your contributions. Really great conversation today and great questions and comments in the chat. So really appreciate everyone's time. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.